I've been working night security for different companies around Sacramento for 8 years. But what happened at Riverside Memorial Cemetery in March 2022 still makes my hands shake when I think about it. I'm sharing this because I need people to understand that sometimes what looks supernatural has the most terrifying human explanation possible. My name's Marcus, and I took the graveyard shift at Riverside Memorial because the pay was decent, and I figured it would be quiet work. The cemetery sits on 43 acres in East Sacramento, surrounded by old oak trees and bordered by Folsom Boulevard on the south side. I'd patrol the grounds in my 2018 Honda Accord, checking for vandals, homeless encampments, or teenagers looking for a thrill. The first few weeks were exactly what I expected. I'd make my rounds every 2 hours, check the maintenance building, the chapel, and the older sections where the headstones dated back to the 1890s. The only sounds were my footsteps on gravel paths and the occasional train whistle from the tracks a mile east. But on March 15th, around 2:30 a.m., I started noticing things that didn't make sense. I was walking through Section C, near the veterans area, when I heard what sounded like digging. Not the slow, methodical work of a maintenance crew, but frantic, urgent scraping against dirt and stone. I grabbed my mag light and headed toward the sound, calling out that the cemetery was closed. The digging stopped immediately. I swept my flashlight across the area, checking behind headstones and monuments. Nothing. No shovels, no disturbed earth, no footprints in the damp soil. Just rows of graves stretching into darkness. I radioed dispatch at Allied Security Services, and they logged the incident. "Probably just an animal," the dispatcher said. "Raccoons, possums. They make all kinds of noise." But I'd grown up in rural Modesto. I knew what animals sounded like, and this wasn't it. 2 nights later, I heard voices. I was parked near the chapel around 1:15 a.m., finishing my incident report from earlier that evening. Someone had tried to climb the fence on Auburn Boulevard, when I heard people talking in hushed, urgent tones. The voices were coming from the newer section, where plots cost more and the headstones were larger. I killed my engine and rolled down the windows of my Accord. The voices continued, but I couldn't make out words. It sounded like at least 3 people, maybe 4, and they seemed to be arguing about something. I called it in and drove toward the voices with my headlights off, using only my parking lights. As I got closer, the talking stopped. I parked and approached on foot, my radio ready and my flashlight scanning the ground. Nothing. No people, no footprints, no tire tracks from other vehicles. The main gate was still locked, and I checked the fence line at the start of my shift. Nobody had broken in. But here's what bothered me. The voices had been too clear, too close. If someone was hiding behind headstones, I should have found some trace of them. I started thinking I was losing my mind. The third incident happened 5 nights later, and it nearly made me quit. I was making my 3 a.m. rounds when I saw a light moving through Section D, the oldest part of the cemetery. Not a flashlight beam, but a steady glow that seemed to float about 4 feet off the ground. It moved between headstones with purpose, like someone carrying a lantern, stopping at specific graves. My heart was hammering as I radioed dispatch. "I've got an intruder with a light source in Section D, requesting backup." "Copy that, Marcus. Police are 20 minutes out. Do not approach." But I had to see what was happening. I parked at the section entrance and approached on foot, staying behind cover. The light was still there, moving slowly among graves that dated back to the 1920s. As I got closer, I could hear that digging sound again, but softer now, more careful. I was about 30 yards away when the light suddenly went out. Complete darkness. Complete silence. I clicked on my mag light and swept the area. Nothing. But as I walked closer to where the light had been, I found something that made my blood run cold. Fresh dirt. Not just disturbed earth, but piles of soil next to 3 different graves. Small holes, maybe 18 inches deep, like someone had been digging test holes. When the police arrived, Officers Patterson and Chin from Sacramento PD took photos and measurements. They found footprints, work boots, size 10 or 11, and what looked like tool marks in the dirt. You think someone's trying to rob graves? I asked Officer Patterson. Maybe. Or looking for something buried with the bodies. He photographed the disturbed graves. We'll increase patrols, but you need to call immediately if you see anyone. Don't try to handle this yourself. That's when I learned something that changed everything. Officer Chin was examining the headstones near the disturbed earth when she called Patterson over. Look at these dates, she said. The 3 graves that had been dug at were all from 1923. All buried within 6 weeks of each other. All women between the ages of 24 and 31. That's specific, Patterson muttered. I went home that morning and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the pattern. 3 graves, same year, same demographics. Someone was looking for something specific. I decided to do some research. Sacramento's main library has newspaper archives going back to the 1890s. I spent my day off going through 1923 editions of the Sacramento Bee, looking for anything about those 3 women. What I found made me understand why someone would risk jail time digging in a cemetery at 3 a.m. All 3 women had died during the same month in 1923. The newspapers described them as prominent society ladies who had died suddenly of illness. But buried in the obituary pages, I found something interesting. All 3 had been wearing expensive jewelry when they died. Custom pieces from a San Francisco jeweler. Diamond necklaces, emerald bracelets, pearl earrings. Jewelry that would be worth a fortune today. I realized I wasn't dealing with something supernatural. I was dealing with something much worse. Someone who had researched these graves, identified valuable items buried with the bodies, and was systematically robbing them. The next night, I went to work with a plan. I arrived early and hid my Honda near the maintenance building. Instead of making my normal rounds, I positioned myself in Section D with a clear view of those 3 graves. I had my radio, my flashlight, and my phone ready to record evidence. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard a vehicle approach from the back of the cemetery, near the service road that connected to the older sections. No headlights, but I could hear tires on gravel. 20 minutes later, I saw the light again. This time, I was ready. I used my phone to record as the light moved between headstones. Through the camera screen, I could see it was actually a small LED lantern, and someone was carrying it while kneeling next to graves. I called 911 and whispered my location. I have visual contact with cemetery intruders. They're actively digging at grave sites. As I watched, I could see at least 2 people working with small shovels or tools. They were being methodical, careful not to make noise. These weren't random vandals or thrill seekers. This was organized grave robbing. The police arrived faster this time, but they used the same approach I had, no lights, approaching on foot. I stayed in position and kept recording until I saw flashlight beams and heard shouting. Sacramento police! Stop and put your hands up! What happened next was chaos. The digging stopped, I heard running footsteps, and then vehicle doors slamming. An engine started, and I saw headlights race toward the back service road. The police caught one of them. His name was Derek Williams, 34 years old, from Stockton. When they searched his 2015 Ford F-150, they found metal detectors, small shovels, maps of the cemetery with graves marked, and research printouts about jewelry buried with bodies in the 1920s. But here's what really disturbed me. Williams had a notebook with detailed information about dozens of graves throughout Northern California. Names, burial dates, and estimated values of jewelry and precious items buried with the bodies. He'd been planning this for months. During questioning, Williams admitted he and his partner had been systematically robbing graves at cemeteries across Sacramento County. They'd researched obituaries from the 1920s and 1930s, when wealthy families commonly buried expensive jewelry with their deceased relatives. The items they'd already stolen were worth over $200,000. But the story doesn't end there. Williams gave up his partner to reduce his sentence, and what the police discovered made this case even more disturbing. The partner was Robert Chin, no relation to Officer Chin, and he worked at the Sacramento County Records Office. He'd been using his access to death certificates and burial records to identify the most valuable targets. They had a list of over 300 graves they planned to rob across 5 counties. What I thought was supernatural activity, the mysterious lights, the digging sounds, the voices in the darkness, was actually a sophisticated criminal operation that had been going on for almost a year. The really sick part? They targeted graves of people who died between 1920 and 1940 because most family members would be dead, so nobody would notice if grave sites were disturbed. I testified at both trials. Williams got 6 years for grave robbing and possession of stolen property. Chin got 8 years because of his abuse of public office. But here's what still bothers me. They'd only hit about 30 graves when we caught them. That means there are potentially hundreds more cemetery crimes that went undetected. I transferred to a different security company after that. Not because I was scared of supernatural activity, but because I realized how many people out there are willing to desecrate graves for money. That's a lot more terrifying than any ghost story. The cemetery installed motion sensors and security cameras throughout the grounds. They also started requiring background checks for anyone with access to burial records. But sometimes, when I'm working late at my current job, a corporate office building downtown, I wonder how many other graveyards are being targeted right now. How many families don't know their loved ones' graves have been disturbed by people who see cemetery plots as treasure maps? That's the real horror story. Not ghosts or supernatural activity, but living people who have no respect for the dead or the families who mourn them. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever noticed anything strange in a cemetery? Disturbed earth, unusual activity at night, or security issues that didn't get proper attention? Because after what I experienced, I believe there are a lot more grave robbers out there than anyone realizes. What happened at Riverside Memorial was just one operation in one city. Think about how many cemeteries exist across the country, and how many of them have minimal security. It makes you wonder what else is happening in the darkness that we're not seeing. But that wasn't the end of our problems in Sacramento. 3 weeks after Williams and Chen were arrested, I got a call from Detective Morrison with Sacramento PD. What she told me made me realize our cemetery incident was connected to something much bigger. I'm Sarah, and I work night security at the California History Museum in downtown Fresno. What happened on July 8, 2022, started as a routine complaint about someone trying to get into the building after hours, but it connected to the grave robbing case from Sacramento in ways that still give me nightmares. I'd been working the overnight shift at the museum for about 3 years. The pay was decent, and I liked the quiet atmosphere. Most nights, I'd walk through the exhibits with my flashlight, check the emergency exits, and monitor the security cameras from my station near the main entrance. The building dates back to 1924, and it's got that old-school charm with marble floors and high ceilings that echo every sound. The museum houses artifacts from California's Gold Rush era, Native American collections, and rotating exhibits about local history. We get school groups during the day, but nights are peaceful. Just me, the exhibits, and the occasional delivery truck picking up items for transport to other museums. Around 11:30 p.m. that night, I was reviewing the security logs when someone started pounding on the main entrance doors. Hard, aggressive knocking that echoed through the lobby. I grabbed my radio and approached the doors. Through the glass, I could see a woman in her late 30s, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. She was carrying a large purse and what looked like a folder or clipboard. "We're closed," I called through the door. "Museum hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. "I have a ticket," she shouted back. "I paid for admission online. I need to get in." I explained that online tickets were only valid during operating hours, but she kept insisting she had the right to enter because she'd paid the admission fee. "Look, I'm sorry, but you'll need to come back tomorrow," I said. "I can't let anyone in after hours." That's when she really lost it. "I drove 2 hours to get here. I paid $25 for admission. You have to let me in." She was screaming now, hitting the glass with her fist. I stepped back and radioed my supervisor at Pinnacle Security Services. "I've got someone at the main entrance demanding to be let in. Claims she has a ticket, but we're closed." "Standard procedure," my supervisor replied. "If she doesn't leave, call Fresno PD for trespassing." But this woman wasn't going anywhere. She kept pounding on the doors, yelling about her rights as a paying customer. I watched her through the security monitors as she walked around the building, checking every entrance and window. After 20 minutes of this, I called the police. Officers Rodriguez and Kim arrived within 15 minutes. I watched through the cameras as they approached the woman, who was now trying to jimmy open a side door with what looked like a screwdriver. "Ma'am, you need to leave the premises," Officer Rodriguez told her. "The museum is closed." "I have documentation," she yelled, waving her folder. "I have every right to be here." That's when I noticed something odd. Through the security camera, I could see inside her folder when she opened it. There were papers, but also what looked like photographs and some kind of diagrams or maps. The officers managed to calm her down enough to look at her documents. Officer Kim radioed for backup, and his tone made me nervous. "We're going to need Detective Williams out here. This isn't just a trespassing case." When Detective Williams arrived, I watched the conversation through the exterior cameras. The woman, I learned later her name was Rebecca Martinez, had a folder full of information about museum exhibits, building layouts, and something that made my blood run cold, photographs of specific artifacts with handwritten notes about their value. Detective Williams came to the door and asked to speak with me. "How long has this woman been here?" he asked. "About an hour. She claims she bought a ticket online and demands to get in." "Did she say anything specific about what she wanted to see?" I thought about it. She mentioned having documentation and being a paying customer. But she seemed to know her way around the building. She went straight to specific entrances like she'd been here before. Detective Williams showed me a photo on his phone. "Have you seen this woman before? Maybe during daytime visits?" I looked at the picture. Rebecca Martinez had shoulder-length brown hair and was wearing different clothes, but something about her face seemed familiar. "Maybe," I said. "We get a lot of visitors, but there was someone a couple weeks ago who spent a really long time in the Gold Rush exhibit. Asked a lot of detailed questions about security procedures." That's when Detective Williams told me something that connected this incident to the Sacramento cemetery case. "This woman is Rebecca Martinez. She's the sister of Robert Chin, the records office employee who was arrested for grave robbing last month. We've been looking for her because we think she has information about other criminal activities." My heart started racing. "You think she was trying to rob the museum?" "We think she was casing it. Look at this." He showed me the contents of her folder. Detailed floor plans of the museum, photographs of our most valuable artifacts, and notes about security camera locations and shift schedules. She'd been planning this for weeks. But the most disturbing part was a handwritten list of items with estimated street values. Gold Rush artifacts, Native American jewelry, historical documents. She'd researched which pieces would be easiest to steal and most valuable to sell. We found similar documentation in her apartment. Detective Williams explained. Floor plans for museums in Stockton, Modesto, and Bakersfield. She's been working with a network of people who specialize in stealing historical artifacts. The connection to the cemetery case became clear. Robert Chin hadn't just been stealing burial records. He'd been providing his network with information about where valuable historical items were located, both in graves and in museums. "How did she get our floor plans?" I asked. "She probably took a legitimate tour, then came back multiple times to gather information. Security cameras show her visiting the museum 4 times in the past month, always alone, always taking photos." They arrested Rebecca Martinez for attempted burglary, possession of burglary tools, and conspiracy. But during her questioning, she revealed information that made this case much bigger. The network included at least 8 people across Central California. They had someone working at the county records office, Chen, someone with connections to private collectors who bought stolen artifacts, and several people who specialized in breaking into museums and historical sites. Martinez had been the reconnaissance specialist. She'd visit museums during normal hours, gather information about security systems and valuable items, then plan break-ins for her partners. But here's what really disturbed me. They'd already successfully robbed 3 smaller museums in the past year. The Sierra Nevada Museum in Grass Valley, the Pioneer Village Museum in Bakersfield, and the Madera County Historical Society. Tens of thousands of dollars in historical artifacts, sold to private collectors who didn't ask questions. Why didn't those thefts make the news? I asked Detective Williams. Because the museums didn't want publicity. They were afraid it would hurt their reputation and funding. They just increased security and filed insurance claims. That made me realize how many museum thefts probably go unreported. These criminals were targeting smaller, less secure facilities because they knew the crimes might be covered up. The investigation revealed that Martinez and her network had been operating for almost 3 years. They specialized in historical artifacts because private collectors pay premium prices for items that can't be traced back to legitimate sources. During the trial, prosecutors revealed that the network had stolen over $400,000 worth of artifacts from museums, historical societies, and private collections. They had buyers in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and even some out-of-state collectors. Martinez got 5 years for attempted burglary and conspiracy. But she gave up information about the other network members in exchange for a reduced sentence. The really sick part was how sophisticated their operation was. They had legitimate business cards, fake credentials, and even a fake authentication service that would provide certificates for stolen items. After the arrests, our museum installed new security systems and changed our visitor policies. Now we require ID for all visitors, limit photography in certain exhibits, and have security guards specifically trained to identify suspicious behavior. But I still think about how close they came to succeeding. If Martinez hadn't gotten impatient and tried to force her way in that night, she might have found a way to complete her reconnaissance and return with her partners for the actual theft. The most valuable items in our Gold Rush exhibit are worth over $200,000. If she'd succeeded, it would have been devastating for the museum and the community. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever noticed someone taking excessive photos in a museum or asking detailed questions about security procedures? Because after this experience, I realize there are people who visit museums not to learn about history, but to figure out how to steal it. These criminals count on museums being trusting environments where people don't expect theft. They exploit our openness and educational mission to plan crimes against our cultural heritage. It makes you wonder how many other visitors are actually criminals gathering information for future thefts. But Martinez's arrest didn't end our security concerns. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Detective Williams that made me realize the artifact theft network had connections to something even more disturbing happening in our region. I'm Jennifer, and I work as a data analyst for Pacific Financial Services in downtown Bakersfield. What happened during my night shift on August 14, 2022, started as an uncomfortable feeling about being watched, but it uncovered a surveillance operation that connected to the museum theft network in ways that still terrify me. I'd been working late shifts at Pacific Financial for about 2 years. The company handles insurance claims and financial consulting for businesses across Central California. Most nights, I'd stay until around 11 p.m. finishing reports and data analysis while the building was quiet. The cleaning crew usually arrived around 9 p.m., but I rarely interacted with them beyond polite nods in the hallway. Our office is on the 7th floor of the Commerce Tower, with about 40 employees during regular hours. At night, it's just me, maybe 1 or 2 other analysts, and the cleaning staff from Central Valley Maintenance Services. The cleaning lady I'm talking about was named Maria Santos. Middle-aged, quiet, always wore the same gray uniform and kept her head down while working. She'd been cleaning our floor for at least 6 months, and I'd never thought much about her until that night in August. I was working late on a particularly complex case involving insurance fraud when I started getting this feeling that someone was watching me. You know that sensation when the hair on your neck stands up? I'd look around, but Maria would be across the office, emptying trash cans or vacuuming. But every time I glanced up from my computer, she seemed to be facing my direction. Around 10:30 p.m., I got up to use the restroom. As I walked past Maria's cleaning cart, I noticed something odd. She had a small notebook sitting next to her supplies, and it was open to a page with what looked like employee names and schedules. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was keeping track of which offices needed special attention or when people usually left. But when I came back from the restroom, Maria quickly closed the notebook and moved her cart away from my workstation. That's when I really started paying attention. Over the next hour, I watched Maria's routine more carefully. She wasn't just cleaning randomly. She was working in a specific pattern, spending extra time near certain desks, and I swear she was taking photos of computer screens with her phone when she thought nobody was looking. Around 11:15 p.m., Maria moved to the empty office next to mine. I could hear her in there, but she seemed to be spending way too much time for just emptying a trash can. I quietly walked to the doorway and peered around the corner. Maria was sitting at the desk, going through papers in the filing cabinet. She had that notebook open again, and she was writing down information from what looked like client files. I stepped back and called security from my desk phone. "This is Jennifer Walsh on the 7th floor. I think someone from the cleaning crew is going through confidential files. We'll send someone up immediately," the security guard replied. But Maria must have heard me talking, because when I looked toward the other office, her cleaning cart was gone and so was she. Security arrived within 5 minutes. 2 guards from Allied Protection Services who worked the building's night shift. I explained what I'd seen, and we searched the floor together. We found Maria in the supply closet, reorganizing cleaning products. She claimed she was just doing her job and seemed confused about why security was questioning her. "I no understand," she said in broken English. "I just clean. Is my job." The security guards checked her cart and found normal cleaning supplies, but no notebook. They asked for her ID and radioed downstairs to verify she was supposed to be working that night. That's when we discovered the first red flag. Central Valley Maintenance Services had no record of Maria Santos working that shift. In fact, they said she'd called in sick and hadn't been in the building all week. "If she's not supposed to be here, how did she get in?" I asked. One of the security guards, Tom Henderson, checked his access logs. "Someone used a valid key card at 8:47 p.m. The card belongs to Elena Martinez, who's been employed with the cleaning company for 2 years. We found Elena Martinez's real ID card in Maria's cleaning cart, along with Central Valley Maintenance uniforms and a master key that shouldn't have been in her possession. But the most disturbing discovery was in her purse. The security guards found the notebook I'd seen, plus a digital camera, a small recorder, and 3 USB drives. The notebook contained detailed information about Pacific Financial employees' names, schedules, project assignments, and personal information like car models and license plate numbers. "This isn't random," Guard Henderson said. "This is organized surveillance. They called the Bakersfield police, and Detective Martinez, no relation to Elena, arrived within 20 minutes. What she found in the notebook made this case much more serious than simple corporate espionage. Maria Santos, whose real name was Carmen Rodriguez, had detailed profiles on 43 Pacific Financial employees. The profiles included work schedules, personal habits, financial information gleaned from overheard conversations, and even notes about family members and home addresses. But here's what connected this to the museum theft case. Carmen Rodriguez was the girlfriend of Rebecca Martinez, the woman who tried to break into the California History Museum in Fresno. We've been looking for Rodriguez since Martinez's arrest. Detective Martinez explained. We suspected she was gathering information for the artifact theft network, but we didn't know how. The connection became clear when they examined the USB drives. Rodriguez had been copying client files from Pacific Financial, specifically looking for information about insurance policies for art collections, historical artifacts, and museum exhibits. Pacific Financial handled insurance for 12 museums across Central California, including the California History Museum. Rodriguez had been stealing confidential information about security systems, valuable collections, and insurance coverage limits. She was providing the theft network with inside information about their targets. Detective Martinez said. Insurance records, security protocols, even details about when valuable pieces would be moved between locations. The investigation revealed that Rodriguez had been using stolen maintenance credentials to access office buildings throughout Bakersfield, Fresno, and Stockton. She'd posed as a cleaning lady to gather intelligence on businesses that handled high-value items. But the most disturbing part was how long this had been going on. Rodriguez had employment records with various cleaning companies dating back 3 years, and she'd used her positions to access confidential information at law firms, insurance companies, and auction houses. How many businesses has she infiltrated? I asked. We're still investigating, but we've found evidence of unauthorized access at 17 different companies. She had master keys, stolen ID cards, and fake employment records for multiple cleaning services. During questioning, Rodriguez admitted she'd been paid by the artifact theft network to gather specific information about potential targets. They'd give her lists of businesses to investigate, and she'd spend weeks or months in each location, building detailed profiles. The network would use her intelligence reports to plan thefts, knowing exactly when buildings would be empty, what security systems they'd face, and which items would be most valuable to steal. But Rodriguez revealed something even more disturbing during her interrogation. The network wasn't just stealing artifacts, they were also selling the confidential information itself. Corporate espionage, Detective Martinez explained. Insurance records, client lists, financial data. They were selling business intelligence to competitors and criminal organizations. Rodriguez had been photographing computer screens, copying files, and recording private conversations for almost 3 years. The amount of confidential information she'd stolen was staggering. During the trial, prosecutors revealed that Rodriguez and the network had sold stolen information to over 20 different buyers. Corporate secrets, client databases, even personal information about employees that could be used for identity theft. Rodriguez got 7 years for identity theft, burglary, and conspiracy. The cleaning company she'd been impersonating faced massive lawsuits for their security failures. Pacific Financial had to notify over 200 clients that their confidential information may have been compromised. We installed new security protocols, background check requirements for all service contractors, and camera systems in areas where sensitive documents are handled. But I still think about how easily Rodriguez had infiltrated our office. She looked like any other cleaning lady, kept her head down, and nobody questioned her presence. She exploited our trust and the invisibility that comes with service jobs. The really scary part is how many other cleaning staff or service workers might be conducting surveillance operations right now. People we see every day but never really notice. After this experience, I pay attention to everyone who has access to my workplace. Not out of paranoia, but because I learned that criminals use legitimate-seeming jobs to gather information for much larger operations. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever noticed cleaning staff or service workers showing unusual interest in your workplace or asking questions that seemed odd for their job? Because after what I experienced, I realized there are people who use these positions to conduct surveillance on businesses and employees. These criminals count on being invisible, on people not paying attention to service workers. They exploit our tendency to ignore people in uniforms doing menial jobs. It makes you wonder how many other surveillance operations are happening in offices, museums, and businesses right now, conducted by people we assume are just doing their jobs. But Rodriguez's arrest didn't end our security concerns. 3 days after her trial, I received a call from Detective Martinez that revealed the artifact theft network had been operating something even more sophisticated than any of us had imagined. I'm David, and I work night security at Westfield Shopping Center in Modesto. What happened on September 3, 2022, started as a routine lockdown violation but revealed the final piece of a criminal network that had been operating across Central California for over 3 years. I'd been working security at Westfield for 5 years, mostly evening and overnight shifts. The mall closes at 9 p.m. on weekdays, and my job is to secure the building, monitor the cameras, and make sure all stores are properly locked. It's usually quiet work, just me walking the corridors with my radio and flashlight, checking that everything's secure until the morning cleaning crews arrive at 5 a.m. Westfield Modesto has about 120 stores across 2 levels, anchored by Macy's, JCPenney, and Target. Most nights, the only sounds are the HVAC system and my footsteps echoing through empty corridors. But that Saturday night, something felt off from the beginning. I was doing my 10:30 p.m. security sweep when I heard voices coming from the north wing, near the department stores. Not unusual sounds like settling pipes or equipment, actual conversation. I grabbed my radio and headed toward the voices. "Control, this is David. I'm hearing voices in the north wing. All stores should be closed and locked." "Copy that, David. Check it out and report back." As I got closer, I could hear what sounded like a family talking, adults and children, and they seemed to be shopping. I heard someone say, "Look at this sale price," and a child asking if they could buy something. I turned the corner near the old Radio Shack location and saw them, a family of 5 walking through the corridor like the mall was open for business. Parents in their 30s, 3 kids between ages 8 and 15, all carrying shopping bags and talking casually about store sales. "Excuse me," I called out. "The mall is closed. You need to leave immediately." The father, a tall guy with dark hair, looked surprised to see me. "Oh, we're fine. We're just finishing up some shopping. Sir, the mall closed over an hour ago. All stores are locked." "How did you get in here?" That's when the mother spoke up. She was carrying multiple shopping bags from stores that I knew had been closed and locked when I made my initial rounds. "We have permission to be here," she said confidently. "We arranged special after-hours access because of the crowds during regular hours. Our family doesn't like waiting in lines." I radioed for backup and explained that I needed to escort them out immediately. But as I got closer, I noticed something that made my heart race. The shopping bags they were carrying were full of merchandise, but the stores they claimed to have shopped at were secured with metal gates and alarm systems that would have triggered if opened. "Sir, I need to see your receipts and documentation for this after-hours access." The father reached into his jacket, and for a moment I thought he might pull out paperwork. Instead, he showed me something that made me step back and call 911 immediately. It was a detailed floor plan of the mall with specific stores marked, security camera locations highlighted, and a schedule showing security patrol times. My patrol times. "How did you get that?" I asked, keeping my distance. "We do our research," he said calmly. "Just like every other job." That's when I realized this wasn't a family trying to avoid crowds. This was an organized retail theft operation, and they'd been planning this for weeks. I radioed dispatch. "I need Modesto PD immediately. I have 5 individuals in the mall with stolen merchandise, and what appears to be surveillance information about our security procedures." The family didn't try to run. They acted like they had every right to be there, even as I explained that police were on the way. When Officers Thompson and Garcia arrived, they found the family still casually walking through the mall corridors. But a search of their bags revealed something incredible. Merchandise from 12 different stores, none of which showed signs of forced entry. "How did they get into locked stores without triggering alarms?" Officer Thompson asked. That's when we discovered they had master keys. The father, who identified himself as Miguel Santos, had a key ring with over 20 keys that opened store security gates, service entrances, and even some cash register locks. When questioned about how he'd obtained them, Santos revealed something that connected this case to everything that had been happening across the region. "We buy information from people who work in these places," he said matter-of-factly. "Cleaning crews, security guards, maintenance workers. They tell us when buildings are empty and how to get inside. Officer Garcia called for Detective Rodriguez, who arrived with crime scene technicians. What they found in the family's vehicles made this case much bigger than simple shoplifting. Santos and his wife Elena had been running organized retail theft operations for almost 4 years. They had detailed intelligence on shopping centers, department stores, and retail locations throughout Central California. Floor plans, security schedules, inventory information, and keys to dozens of businesses. But here's what connected this to the other cases. Elena Santos was the sister of Carmen Rodriguez, the fake cleaning lady who'd been stealing information from Pacific Financial Services. This whole network has been working together, Detective Rodriguez explained. Carmen Rodriguez gathered intelligence on businesses and security procedures. Rebecca Martinez planned museum and historical site thefts. And the Santos family used that information to conduct retail theft operations. The investigation revealed that the Santos family had been stealing merchandise and reselling it through online marketplaces and flea markets. They'd stolen over $300,000 worth of goods in the past 2 years, all using inside information from the surveillance network. But the most disturbing discovery was how they'd infiltrated Westfield's security. One of our part-time security guards, Kevin Walsh, had been providing the Santos family with detailed information about patrol schedules, camera blind spots, and which stores had the most valuable merchandise with the weakest security. Walsh had been selling this information for $500 per month, plus a percentage of whatever the family stole during their shopping trips. How many times have they been in here? I asked Detective Rodriguez. Security footage shows at least 8 previous visits over the past 6 months. They'd wait until after closing, use their stolen keys to enter through service entrances, and spend hours selecting merchandise. The family treated it like regular shopping. They'd compare prices, check sizes, even try on clothes in fitting rooms. The only difference was they weren't paying and the stores were supposed to be closed. During the investigation, police found the Santos family's storage unit contained merchandise from over 40 different retail locations. Clothing, electronics, jewelry, and even furniture, all stolen using intelligence gathered by the surveillance network. Walsh, the corrupt security guard, had been providing information not just about Westfield, but about his previous jobs at other shopping centers and retail locations throughout the Central Valley. The trial revealed the full scope of the network. Carmen Rodriguez would infiltrate businesses as a fake cleaning lady, gathering intelligence about security procedures and valuable inventory. Rebecca Martinez would research historical sites and museums for artifact theft. And the Santos family would use this information to conduct sophisticated retail theft operations. Walsh had been the inside connection, providing real-time information about security schedules and procedures at multiple locations where he'd worked. The sentences were significant. Miguel Santos got 6 years for organized retail theft and conspiracy. Elena Santos got 5 years. Carmen Rodriguez, who'd already been convicted, got additional time for her role in the retail theft network. And Kevin Walsh got 4 years for corruption and conspiracy. But the most satisfying part was recovering merchandise for the victims. Police found over $200,000 worth of stolen goods in the Santos family's storage units and vehicles. Westfield installed new security protocols after the arrests. All employees now undergo extensive background checks, security procedures were completely revised, and we have new alarm systems that can't be bypassed with stolen keys. But I still think about how sophisticated this operation was. This wasn't random shoplifting, it was organized crime using surveillance and inside information to systematically rob retail businesses. The scary part is how long they operated without being caught. If they hadn't gotten greedy and tried that brazen after-hours shopping trip, they might still be stealing merchandise and selling it online. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever bought merchandise online or at flea markets that seemed too cheap for the brand or quality? Because after this experience, I realize there's a massive market for stolen goods, and buyers often don't ask questions about where items come from. These criminals count on consumers wanting bargains and not questioning suspicious deals. They exploit online marketplaces and informal sales venues to move stolen merchandise quickly, It makes you wonder how much of the discount merchandise sold through unofficial channels is actually stolen from legitimate retailers. The Santos family case closed the book on a criminal network that had been operating across Central California for years. But it also made me realize how many other organized retail theft operations might be running right now, using similar methods to steal millions of dollars worth of merchandise. What started as grave robbing in Sacramento had evolved into a sophisticated criminal enterprise involving museum theft, corporate espionage, and organized retail crime. All of it connected by people willing to exploit trust and use inside information to steal from businesses and institutions. The really disturbing part is how normal they all seemed. A records office employee, a cleaning lady, a security guard, and a family who looked like regular shoppers. None of them fit the stereotype of dangerous criminals, which is exactly why they were so successful for so long. That's the real lesson from all of this. Criminal networks are often hidden in plain sight, using legitimate-seeming jobs and everyday activities to conduct sophisticated operations that can go undetected for years. I'm Michael, and I work the night shift at Fresh Mart 24-hour grocery on McHenry Avenue in Modesto. What happened during my shift change on September 18, 2022, seemed like just another chatty customer at first, but it revealed how the criminal network we thought we'd dismantled was actually still operating through sophisticated surveillance operations. I'd been working overnight stock at Fresh Mart for about 18 months. It's a busy store that serves the late-night crowd: hospital workers getting off shift, truck drivers, insomniacs, and people who just prefer shopping when it's less crowded. The night shift runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I usually spend my time restocking shelves, cleaning, and helping the occasional customer. Fresh Mart is a large store with 12 aisles, a pharmacy that closes at midnight, and a deli counter that stays open until 2 a.m. At night, we usually have just 3 employees: myself, a cashier named Lisa, and a security guard who makes rounds every hour. On September 18th, I was finishing up the evening shift transition when this guy came in around 10:45 p.m. He was probably in his 40s, average height, wearing jeans and a polo shirt. Nothing unusual about his appearance, but he was incredibly talkative. "Hey there! Beautiful night, isn't it?" he said as he grabbed a shopping cart. "I love shopping at night, so much more peaceful than during the day." I nodded politely and continued stocking the cereal aisle. But this guy, he said his name was Steve, kept talking. He asked about store hours, complimented the cleanliness, and seemed genuinely interested in having a conversation. "You know, I've been thinking about applying for a job here," Steve said. "What's it like working nights? Do you get good benefits?" Over the next hour, Steve wandered through the store with his cart, but he wasn't really shopping. He was talking to everyone: Lisa at the register, the security guard, even the deli worker. He was friendly, personable, and seemed harmless. But something about his behavior bothered me. Steve would spend several minutes in each aisle, but he wasn't looking at products. He seemed more interested in the store layout, asking questions about delivery schedules, security procedures, and employee routines. "When do you guys get your shipments?" he asked while I was stocking soup cans. "Must be a lot of work handling all that inventory. When does the security guard usually make his rounds? I noticed he's been by a few times. Do you have cameras in all the aisles? This is such a well-run store." I started paying closer attention to Steve's movements. He'd position himself near corners, spend time in areas with good sight lines of the whole store, and I swear he was taking photos with his phone when he thought nobody was looking. Around midnight, I saw Steve near the pharmacy area, and he was doing something with his shopping cart that looked odd. He appeared to be adjusting something inside it, and when he saw me watching, he quickly moved away. That's when I decided to follow him discreetly. Steve went to the hardware aisle and spent about 10 minutes looking at duct tape and batteries. But he wasn't shopping, he was installing something. I watched from the end of the aisle as he placed a small device behind a box of screws on the bottom shelf. My heart started racing. I walked over after he left and found a tiny camera, about the size of a quarter, positioned to record customer and employee movements throughout that section of the store. I immediately called our security guard, Tom Martinez, and showed him what I'd found. "Jesus," Tom whispered. "This is surveillance equipment. We need to call the police immediately." But I wanted to catch Steve in the act. "Let's watch him and see what else he's doing before he leaves." We monitored Steve from a distance as he continued his shopping. Over the next 30 minutes, we watched him place devices in 4 different locations: the electronics section, near the customer service desk, in the produce area, and by the main entrance. Each device was carefully concealed and positioned to capture specific areas of the store. This wasn't random, it was a systematic surveillance installation. Around 1:15 a.m., Tom called Modesto PD while I continued watching Steve. But Steve must have sensed something was wrong, because he suddenly abandoned his cart and headed for the exit. "He's leaving," I radioed Tom. "Should we stop him?" "No, let him go. Police are 2 minutes out." But Steve didn't just leave, he ran. He sprinted through the parking lot to a 2017 Dodge Ram pickup truck and sped away before the police arrived. Officers Chin and Rodriguez arrived and examined the devices Steve had planted. They were high-quality surveillance equipment, small cameras with wireless transmission capabilities and audio recording functions. "This is professional-grade stuff," Officer Chin said. "Not something you buy at an electronics store. This is law enforcement or military equipment." Detective Williams arrived shortly after and immediately recognized the sophistication of the operation. "We've seen this before," she said. "These devices are designed to monitor customer patterns, employee routines, and security procedures. Someone's planning something big." The investigation into Steve's identity revealed something that connected this incident to the criminal network we thought had been dismantled. Steve's real name was Robert Martinez, the brother of Rebecca Martinez, who'd been arrested for planning museum thefts. He'd been the technical specialist for the criminal network, responsible for installing surveillance equipment at target locations. But here's what made this case even more disturbing: Martinez hadn't been acting alone that night. The surveillance devices he'd installed were part of a much larger operation. We found similar equipment at 17 other businesses throughout Modesto and Stockton. Detective Williams explained. Grocery stores, pharmacies, electronics retailers, jewelry stores. All installed by Martinez over the past 6 months. The network had been rebuilding itself after the arrests. While their associates were in prison, Martinez had been conducting reconnaissance on new targets and installing surveillance equipment to monitor potential robbery locations. The cameras at Fresh Mart were positioned to record when cash registers were opened, when security guards made their rounds, and when the store was most vulnerable to theft. But the most sophisticated part of the operation was how Martinez had been gathering intelligence. He wasn't just installing cameras, he was building detailed profiles of businesses and their security weaknesses. He'd spend hours in each location, talking to employees, learning routines, and identifying the most valuable merchandise. Detective Williams said. Then he'd install surveillance equipment to monitor these locations remotely. During the search of Martinez's apartment, police found a command center with monitors displaying feeds from dozens of surveillance devices installed throughout Central California. He'd been watching businesses for months, building intelligence for future robberies. The investigation revealed that Martinez had been planning coordinated thefts at multiple locations. The network's new strategy was to hit several targets simultaneously, using the surveillance data to time their crimes perfectly. But Martinez had made one crucial mistake: he'd been too friendly, too talkative. His attempts to gather information through conversation had made employees suspicious enough to notice his other activities. The trial revealed that Martinez had been working with a new crew of criminals, including some who had connections to the original network. They'd been planning what prosecutors called the biggest coordinated retail theft operation in Central Valley history. Martinez got 8 years for surveillance crimes, conspiracy, and attempted burglary. The new network members received sentences ranging from 3 to 6 years. But the most important outcome was discovering how many businesses had been under surveillance without knowing it. The investigation led to finding over 200 hidden cameras and recording devices throughout the region. Freshmart installed new security protocols after the incident, including regular sweeps for surveillance devices and training for employees to recognize suspicious behavior. But I still think about how sophisticated Martinez's operation was. He'd spent months building intelligence on dozens of businesses, all while appearing to be just a friendly customer who enjoyed late-night shopping. The really scary part is how many other surveillance operations might be running right now. People who seem like regular customers but are actually gathering intelligence for criminal networks. After this experience, I pay attention to customers who ask too many questions about store operations, spend excessive time in certain areas without shopping, or seem more interested in security procedures than merchandise. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever noticed someone in a store who seemed overly interested in security cameras, employee schedules, or operational procedures? Because after what I experienced, I realized there are people who use casual conversation and friendly behavior to gather intelligence for criminal activities. These surveillance operations depend on businesses and employees not recognizing the signs of reconnaissance. They exploit our tendency to be helpful and answer questions from friendly customers. It makes you wonder how many seemingly innocent interactions are actually intelligence-gathering operations for criminal networks planning future crimes. The Martinez case proved that even after arrests and prosecutions, criminal networks find ways to rebuild and evolve. They learn from their mistakes, develop new methods, and continue targeting businesses and communities. What started with grave robbing in Sacramento had evolved into a sophisticated criminal enterprise spanning multiple counties and involving dozens of accomplices. Even after we thought we'd dismantled the network, they were already rebuilding with new technology and more advanced surveillance methods. The 5 cases: the cemetery security guard, museum attempted break-in, corporate espionage through fake cleaning staff, organized retail theft, and systematic surveillance installation, showed how criminal networks adapt and expand their operations over time. But they also showed that ordinary people doing their jobs can make a difference. Each case was solved because someone noticed unusual behavior and reported it. Security guards, office workers, and retail employees who paid attention to details and trusted their instincts. That's the real lesson from all of this. Criminal networks may be sophisticated, but they're not invisible. They depend on people not noticing, not caring, or not reporting suspicious activity. The next time you see someone asking unusual questions, spending excessive time in sensitive areas, or showing more interest in security procedures than normal business, trust your instincts. It might just be curiosity, but it could also be reconnaissance for criminal activity. Because as we learned from this 5-case network, today's friendly customer gathering information could be tomorrow's criminal using that intelligence to rob your workplace or community. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.